Before the glowing screen captured our nightly attention, families gathered in spaces designed for genuine connection and shared hobbies. The heart of the home looked completely different back in the good old days. Today we are looking back at 10 living room features that disappeared when TVs took over. Before the television became the king of the living room, the upright piano was the ultimate centerpiece of American household entertainment. If you grew up in the early to mid-20th century, there is a good chance your family had a heavy wooden piano sitting proudly against the parlor wall. Long before we could tune into a variety show or watch a concert broadcast live, families actually had to make their own music. After dinner, relatives would gather around the piano bench, passing out worn sheets of music and singing popular standards, hymns, or folk songs together. It was a highly interactive experience that required practice and a willingness to entertain one another. Once the television set rolled into the room, the piano was slowly pushed into the basement or sold off entirely, replacing the joyful noise of family sing-alongs with the canned laughter of sitcoms. Before the television gave us moving pictures, the massive wooden console radio was the absolute focal point of the American living room. These were not the small plastic alarm clocks of later decades, but spectacular pieces of fine mahogany furniture that commanded respect. Families arranged their best armchairs and sofas in a semicircle around the glowing amber dial of the Zenith or Philco console. In the evenings, everyone sat quietly, staring at the wooden speaker grill while listening to Little Orphan Annie, The Shadow, or the President's Fireside Chats. The radio required active imagination, painting vivid pictures in the minds of listeners captivated by immersive audio dramas. When the television arrived, it stole the radio's exact physical footprint in the room, relegating radio broadcasts to the kitchen or the dashboard of the family car. If you look at vintage photographs of living rooms from the early 20th century, you will immediately notice that all the furniture was arranged specifically for face-to-face conversation. Sofas faced directly opposite matching love seats, and heavy upholstered armchairs were angled inward to create an intimate circle where eye contact was unavoidable. The entire layout of the room was deliberately engineered to facilitate talking, debating, and catching up with guests over a hot cup of coffee. The arrival of the television completely destroyed this conversational geometry, acting like a powerful magnet that pulled every piece of furniture toward a single wall. Suddenly, couches were turned to face the screen, and recliners were lined up in rows like seats in a movie theater. We stopped looking at each other during the evenings and started staring straight ahead at the glowing box, fundamentally changing how families interacted. Long before families spent Friday nights watching television shows, the permanently assembled card table was a staple of the American living room. Tucked into a corner or placed near a sunny window, this small square table was always ready for a fierce game of bridge, pinochle, or canasta. It was not just for cards, as these tables hosted massive jigsaw puzzles that took weeks to complete, intense games of Monopoly, and quiet afternoons of chess. The card table was a hub of friendly competition and strategic thinking that kept children and adults fully engaged for hours. When the television became the dominant form of evening entertainment, the card table was folded up and banished to the hall closet, only to be dragged out once a year for the kids to sit at during Thanksgiving dinner. There was a time when a well-stocked bookcase was considered the ultimate status symbol and the primary source of quiet evening entertainment. Walls were lined with beautiful glass-fronted Barrister bookcases filled with encyclopedias, classic novels, historical biographies, and poetry collections. Reading was a shared communal activity where family members sat in the same room, silently absorbed in their respective books, occasionally reading a fascinating passage out loud to the group. The living room functioned much like a cozy private library, encouraging literacy, continuous learning, and quiet reflection after a long day of work. As the television took over the visual real estate of the room, bookshelves were often torn out or repurposed to hold VHS tapes, cable boxes, and tangled wires. The quiet rustle of turning pages was quickly replaced by the loud broadcast of the evening news. Hosting guests in the pre-television era was a highly ritualized affair, and the formal tea cart was a permanent fixture in any respectable living room. These elegant wheeled carts were beautifully crafted from brass or polished wood and were always stocked with delicate porcelain cups, saucers, and crystal decanters. When neighbors dropped by, the host gracefully rolled the cart to the center of the room, serving hot beverages, finger sandwiches, and homemade pastries while engaging in polite conversation. It was a symbol of hospitality that made every visit feel like a special, dignified occasion. The invention of the television completely shifted the focus of hosting from conversation to shared viewing, and the elegant tea cart was swiftly replaced by the flimsy folding TV tray. Instead of sipping tea from fine china, families began eating frozen dinners on metal trays while watching their favorite programs. For centuries, the fireplace was the undisputed heart of the home, providing essential warmth and serving as the architectural anchor of the living room. Every piece of furniture was naturally oriented toward the hearth, and the mantel was decorated with the family's most prized possessions, including ticking carriage clocks, framed heirloom photographs, and fresh flowers. Staring into the dancing flames was the original evening entertainment, offering a mesmerizing and calming end to a busy day. The television introduced a massive competing focal point that completely disrupted this traditional layout. Homeowners suddenly faced the agonizing interior design dilemma of whether to point their sofa at the beautiful brick fireplace or at the new electronic screen. Eventually, the television won the battle, often being awkwardly mounted directly above the mantel itself, forever changing the cozy, traditional dynamic of the family hearth. Before the television required the living room lights to be dimmed for optimal screen viewing, the space was filled with bright, purposeful lighting designed for reading and handiwork. Almost every corner of the room featured a dedicated reading nook, complete with a heavily cushioned armchair, a sturdy side table, and an intricate fringed floor lamp that cast a warm, direct glow. Mothers sat in these well-lit corners darning socks, knitting sweaters, or doing embroidery, while fathers read the evening newspaper from front to back. The lighting was highly localized, creating small, intimate pockets of activity where family members could pursue their own quiet hobbies together. When the TV became the main event, these bright lamps caused an annoying glare on the glass screen, prompting families to turn off the lights and abandon their evening handiwork in favor of sitting in the dark. During the golden age of vinyl, the high-fidelity stereophonic console was a massive, glorious piece of living room furniture that rivaled the television in size and importance. These long, sleek wooden cabinets housed a turntable, a radio tuner, and powerful built-in speakers that could fill the entire house with incredibly rich sound. Listening to music was not a passive background activity, but a dedicated event where friends gathered specifically to listen to a brand new album from start to finish. People carefully slid heavy vinyl records out of their cardboard sleeves, gently dropped the needle, and sat back to appreciate the lush, warm audio quality. As televisions grew larger and transformed into massive home theater systems, the beautiful wooden stereo consoles were hauled out to the curb, replacing the magic of pure audio with the dominance of the glowing screen. Perhaps the biggest casualty of the television era was the very concept of the formal parlor itself. In the past, the front room of the house was kept absolutely pristine, featuring the best furniture, the cleanest carpets, and fragile decor that children were strictly forbidden from touching. This room was reserved exclusively for Sunday afternoons, entertaining important guests, or celebrating major holidays in a refined, civilized atmosphere. The television fundamentally destroyed the idea of a room being too good for everyday use. As the TV became the center of daily life, the formal parlor morphed into the modern family room, a casual, highly trafficked space filled with comfortable recliners, scattered toys, and snack crumbs. The elegance of the formal living room faded into history, replaced by a much more relaxed, screen-centered lifestyle that changed the American home forever. Which of these forgotten living room features do you wish you had in your home? Please let us know your answer down in the comments, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more nostalgic trips down memory lane.